Assalamu alaikum. Hello viewers. Theoretically speaking, the domain of international relations has been dominated by two schools of thought. On the one hand, realism and its variants, and on the other hand, liberalism and its variants. Especially if we see in the era of Cold War, in the decade of 1970s, then this debate was continued between neorealism and neoliberalism. Many scholars, they were dissatisfied by the explanation of these two schools of thought, that with the changing dynamics of international politics, with the changing structures of international relations, then there was a need for new explanation and new interpretation. That's why some young scholars, they were emerging in the world, particularly in the United States. And these two schools of thought, neorealism and neoliberalism, they were presenting their own views and arguments while giving challenge and challenging the opposing views of each other. Like the neorealists claim, especially the scholar Robert Gilpin, how he was predicting about the continuity of the bipolar system in the Cold War. He was predicting that this bipolarity would continue and the world's international system would be bipolar, having two superpowers, United States and the Soviet Union. But the ending of socialist regimes in the Eastern Europe, the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and then the final disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, it severely damaged and destroyed the claim of realists, particularly the neorealists. Also, the triumph of the new liberal world, the capitalism, and also like Francis Fukuyama was claiming about the end of the history, that half capitalism was having victory. So if we see that 9/11 attacks also jolted the international politics, and serious questions were raised about the security of the world, and also that half non-state actors, they just challenged the security of the sole superpower of the world. So then new scholarship was developed, and this scholarship, one was motivated by the end of the Cold War, and second motivated by the 9/11 attacks. So in the last 3 to 4 decades, an alternative approach was developed in international relations that is called Constructivism. These constructivists, they claim that international relations historically and socially constructed. The system of international relations, the system of international politics is not given by nature. It is not inherently what we have today, but rather it is socially constructed. The phenomena of international relations, the events and all the concepts what we have, these are socially constructed over the time. That's why what we have today, that is by coordination and also by interaction. So the meanings of international relations, these are constructed through mutually constituted mechanisms. I mean, according to constructivism, there are agents or actors on the one hand, and the structure on the other hand. So like realists and neorealists, they say that there are some structures in international politics which are material structures, but constructivists say that no, those are ideational structures. Those are formed and those are made by ideas. So constructivism is also state-centric theory. It believes in the centrality of states in international politics, It believes in the anarchic structure of the international system. So on the one hand, this constructivism is a challenge or is an alternative to both realism and liberalism, but on the other hand, it shares with both. I mean, the anarchic structure of international system and the centrality of states in international politics. These are the facts and concepts of realism which have been shared by constructivism as well. The liberalism ideas about cooperation, that yes, it is possible, about the international trade, that have the more and more interaction of states also increases trade, and more trade also increases interaction among the states, and this interaction between the states then reaches towards international cooperation and towards the resolution of disputes through non-violent and peaceful means of diplomacy and negotiations. So these are the notions also shared by constructivism. In the late 1980s and in the early 1990s, this concept of constructivism got momentum. And especially at the dawn of 21st century, much scholarship has been produced within constructivism. Main scholars of constructivism, the constructivist school of thought and international relations theory, those are Alexander Wendt, Nicholas Onuf, Ernst B. Haas, Peter M. Haas, and John Rogge, Emmanuel Adler. These scholars have worked too much in the field and theory of constructivism. Especially Alexander Wendt, when he wrote a research article in famous international organization journal in 1992 about anarchy is what states make of it and the social construction of power politics. He elaborated about the social constructivism. He talked about the social construction of international politics. He discussed about the international anarchy, that this is the anarchy, no doubt is there, but states, if they can make, but states are also responsible that they can make an end, make a full stop to anarchy in international politics. So the fear, for example, among the states, that is also made by the states, by the shared knowledge. So it can be finished. And even the concept of power politics in the language of realism, this is socially constructed. So we can finish it, we can overcome it. The disputes in international relations, war, the conflict, mistrust, misinformation, all these things, we can stop it and we can increase cooperation in so many fields among the states because all these concepts are socially constructed. The structures in international system and politics must not be considered as strictly and 100% materialistic structures, but ideational structures. That there are some shared ideas which give meaning to these structures. If we see the relationship between two or more than two states, if the relationship is hostile, of course, some factors are responsible for this hostility. And those factors contribute to this structure of hostility between those states. So something maybe in their history, something maybe in their culture, something maybe in their government systems, and so on and so on. So these structures then, of course, perform their duties towards the hostility. And also, if there is alliance between the states, if there is friendship and friendly relations between the states. So the structure of this friendship is also responsible for having closer cooperation between the states. So then this friendship, the structure of friendship, the structure of trust, the structure of confidence between these states are also that is made by shared ideas, shared knowledge, culture, norms, all these things. I mean, this is also a social construction. This is also socially constructed over the time. So all this reality, what we see, if that is anarchy, if that is international institution, if this is international trade, if international law, these are socially constructed. They have some meaning, and that meaning of an international institution, dispute, war, international structure, that depends on the ideas, what ideas gave the meaning, and the states' interaction. So all these things are socially constructed. This is realism, what it talks about. So Alexander Wendt, when he wrote a research paper in 1992 in a famous research journal, International Organization, the article's title was Anarchy as What States Make of It and the Social Construction of Power Politics. Later on, he elaborated more and more when he transformed this and changed this research article into a book published in 1999, which he called it Social Theory of International Politics. So he not only talked about the shared ideas, knowledge, cultures, norms, the communication, and how it affects the behavior of the states, but also he challenged the basic foundations of both liberalism and realism, and also he was very much optimistic while describing the structure and the agents' structure and the actors' relationship, mutually constituted relationship with one another. Here we have another example about China. China is rising. If we see in Europe, the rising power was threatening. So the neighboring states, they got together and formed alliance, fought wars with a rising state. But here, in the case of China, China is rising, but there is no balance of power, especially if we see from the East Asian neighbors. Why? Many scholars like David Kong, David Schambach, they claim that it is in the history of China that China remained, much of the time it remained peaceful. So that's why the East Asian neighbors, they don't want to join hands with one another and form an alliance against the rising People's Republic of China. So in Europe there was anarchical structure, but here in East Asia there was hierarchical structure in international relations. So the same hierarchical structure has been continued by the neighbors, East Asian neighbors of China. This thing that why now there is no balance of power against China from the East Asian neighbors, it is historical fact. And this history of China's relationship with its East Asian neighbors, that has been shared by and constructed by so many ideas. Confucianism is there. Confucianism is very dominant in China and also in so many East Asian countries. So the shared knowledge, shared culture, the shared norms also, it gives this a confidence to East Asian neighbors of China that China would not be threatening and would not be a potential threat in future. That's why they are not making any balance of power against People's Republic of China. Second, like democratic peace, I have talked in my one of the previous videos that the democracies, they don't go to war against one another. That's called dyadic peace. And that is also because of the shared values, shared democratic laws, and so many other things. The word or this term of constructivism was coined by Nicholas Onuff, who is now Professor Emeritus in the Florida International University of America of USA. So all these structures, concepts in international politics in relations according to realism, these are socially constructed also by interaction of the states. So if an interaction of state, it gives rise to a conflict and war between the states. So an interaction of state may also give rise to cooperation and friendship between the states. What we have to look into the socially constructed meaning of phenomena in international relations, and what we have to look, we have also to look for an into a relationship between an actor and a structure, and also an agent and a structure, the mutually constitutive relationship and the mutual constitutive behavior between these two. Then we can understand international politics. That is why scholars, they say that constructivism, it is an interpretative theory, not an explanatory theory. It gives interpretation but not explanation. Even the critics of constructivism, they say that constructivism is not a full-fledged theory but rather a theoretical approach towards the phenomenon of international relations. But the proponents of constructivism, they say that this is a theory. Keep watching, viewers. Take care and goodbye.